Today's video is sponsored by Cash App, which is great because I don't have to spend the next 30 seconds explaining what that is. But did you know that you can now get a Cash App debit card? Not only that, but unlike your bank's boring card that is identical to everyone else's, you can customize your card with a range of designs and colors. Like mine, that even glows in the dark. But the card is more than just a tool to hold the $4.28 in my account. It also allows me to get discounts every day on items like coffee, food delivery, and even concerts. I'm able to get exclusive pre-sale ticket access to artists like Kendrick Lamar and Sabrina Carpenter. And did I mention that there's no minimum requirement with the Cash App card? If I haven't, well then good news, because there's no minimum requirement for the Cash App card. With the added bonus of having security at the forefront, you'll not have to worry about any overdraft fees. In fact, if you deposit $300 per month, you unlock up to $200 in overdraft coverage. For a limited time, new Cash App customers can earn $10 if they use code CASH10 in their profile at sign up and send $5 to a friend within 14 days. Terms apply. So if a card that can glow in the dark, has no fee overdraft coverage, and gives you exclusive discounts sounds like your thing, click the link below and get your Cash App card today.
It's just a cookie, but newtons of fruit and cake.
Pleased to see you care.
Wait, from the everyday.
Strovia!
Spotted on CCTV carrying a heavy bag towards a nature reserve where a human torso had been found.
He used his bank cards, he used his phone in order to try and create the impression that he was still alive.
It's definitely a mistake. 100%.
On April 4th, 2024, in the city of Salford, Greater Manchester, a resident of the area was out for a walk in a nature preserve called Kersal Dale, a popular area for nature lovers, bird watchers, and frankly anyone who enjoyed a scenic walk. And although the weather for the day was cold and rainy, it still was a magnet for locals who were no strangers to the nasty weather. Kersal Dale was also home to an old concrete bunker that had become a hotspot for graffiti artists. The resident, whose identity has remained private, was passing through that area when they noticed something that seemed so unbelievable that they assumed that they were just seeing things. Sitting out in plain view, almost as if someone had left it on display, was a chunk of a human torso, including the lower back, buttocks, and part of one thigh, all wrapped in clear plastic film. It would later be determined that the partial human remains weighed about 13 kilograms, or nearly 30 pounds.
We're investigating the discovery of human remains that were found by passers-by here at Kersal Wetlands yesterday evening. We do not know the identity of the person or whether they are male or female. From forensic inquiries so far, we believe that these remains are likely to have been here for a matter of days, and it really is a tragic case. We know this will be concerning for people in the local area, and we ask anyone with concerns or any information whatsoever to speak to uniformed officers who will be in the area for a number of days. These are very early stages in what is a murder investigation and is a tragic case. We are keeping an open mind, and we do all that we can to establish the circumstances and provide answers as soon as we can. Thank you.
The resident immediately called the police, and the police immediately launched a search. Not for the killer, though, but for video evidence. You see, the United Kingdom has some of the most extensive CCTV surveillance in the world. And in a place like Manchester, it's very hard for anyone to move around without being recorded. In fact, Manchester police have a dedicated unit for collecting CCTV footage called the Video Evidence Recovery Analysis Unit, or VERA for short. Detectives from VERA went door to door in the surrounding area, asking for any footage from the 6 days leading up to the discovery. They asked shops, schools, homes, as well as issuing a public appeal for dashcam footage from the area around the most popular entrance of the park. Senior investigating officer Lewis Hughes told his team to look for what he called the heavy bag man. You see, 30 pounds of human flesh wouldn't exactly be a light load to carry, and anyone toting that much weight for any type of distance would probably show strain. Police wouldn't have to wait long for a break in the case, however. Footage from a school revealed their first major lead. A man with shoulder-length hair struggling down the street with a heavy blue reusable shopping bag, known in the UK as a bag for life. One of the cameras pointed directly into the woods at Kersaldale and captured the man staggering into the park with the bag in hand. 10 minutes later, he walked out, no longer struggling with the bag. Instead, it was folded up and carried with ease. From there, VERA detectives followed the man all over town. Tracking him on CCTV, they watched as he boarded a bus nearby. Detectives called transport for Greater Manchester to ask about their records, and sure enough, only one passenger had boarded that bus at that stop. But unfortunately, he paid in cash. However, this heavy bag man had been a little too clever. He used cash to buy an any bus day saver ticket that actually allowed him to take multiple buses over the course of the day. And while the money he used to purchase that ticket couldn't be traced, the ticket itself could be. The bagman had gotten on and off of the bus all over Greater Manchester. He returned over and over again to a single stop near Worsley Road in the Winton area of Salford, in a town within the city called Eccles. From there, he fanned out, carrying bag after bag to various places around the city. CCTV picked him up near a Tesco in Pendleton, near a park called Boggart Hill, at Chesterfield Close, at the Linnyshaw Colliery Woods, and the Blackleach Reservoir. And in all of those places, investigators would find pieces of the body. A piece of a spine, parts of a head and face, ribs, kidney, lungs, genitalia, and even the victim's heart. Investigators found themselves with not so much a body, but instead a morbid jigsaw puzzle. And then, in perhaps the strangest twist in this case, police got lucky. Detectives from the VERA unit were out canvassing the area for CCTV footage when one of them spotted a man with shoulder-length hair carrying a blue bag and waiting for the bus. When the bus pulled up, the man stepped aboard and police followed right behind him. They arrested the man on the spot and, probably with some hesitation, they opened the blue bag. They didn't find any random body parts or organs. Instead, they found cleaning supplies, a phone, and a bank card belonging to a man named Stuart Everett. The man carrying the bag, however, was not Stuart Everett. He was Marcin Majerkiewicz, a 42-year-old father of two who lived in a house on Worsley Road, a house that belonged to 67-year-old Stuart Everett.
Grey bag for life and black trainers.
Mike Echo 1-1. Got one matching that description. Down in front of you. Being signed, you're detained for the purpose of a search while you ascertain your identity, okay?
Or if you could pass me your mobile number for
Just one stand up first.
On this tour group, give us a call, please.
Can you double check, please?
Try to check his pockets.
Thank you. Somebody this tour group with a van to collect this potential customer that's coming in.
Have you got anything sharp or anything in your pockets that might hurt me?
Absolutely, mate.
Okay. It's fine, don't worry, we'll just check and then...
Blast the box drop for a van
It's
for you.
definitely a mistake. 100%.
I know, I appreciate that. All we've had is information passed to us from officers investigating a serious matter as to whether you may be involved.
Happened on
Just stand there.
like
Not right now. Not today, but it has happened recently, okay? It's 12 minutes past 1, it's a minute time, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder. Do you understand the offence? You're under arrest for the meeting time, okay? Suspicion of murder for an incident which occurred in Salford, alright? So you were taken to police station for question regarding that.
Okay, I go with you and I answer any questions.
Yeah, alright.
Just want it as a job walk, no?
Yeah, no, that's
You're searching it over. He has, mate, yeah.
Still basically got nothing in West Brom there.
Do it again if you want to, but...
Right, I've seen that, mate. What's your head?
What's your head?
Stuart, who went by Benny with his family, was the sort of man that everyone describes with phrases like, he didn't have an enemy in the world. He had been born in Derby under the name Roman Zamaki, to Polish parents who had survived concentration camps during the Second World War. He had worked for Britain's National Health Service and Department of Work and Pensions, and he had met Marcin while teaching English to Polish immigrants. Stuart had moved into the house on Worsley Road in 2013, and Marcin had moved in 4 years later to sublet one of the bedrooms. Now, it's a little hard to tell what the relationship between Stuart and Marcin was like. Marcin was clearly renting a room from Stuart for a while, but there were no payments to Stuart after a certain point in 2023, and Stuart described Marcin to at least one person as his partner. Stuart had never been married, even though he was a cheerful and friendly man who enjoyed watching cricket and betting on horse racing. At least for a while, he seemed to genuinely enjoy Marcin's company. But one thing that isn't hard to guess is why things went sour. By the spring of 2024, Marcin had been out of work for at least 6 months and was about £73,000, nearly $100,000 in debt. Sometime around March 28, 2024, according to prosecutors, Marcin beat Stuart to death with a hammer or something similar. The reason I am somewhat vague on the murder weapon is due to the word straight from the pathologist who conducted the autopsy on Stuart. According to Dr. Philip Lum, the most likely cause of death was blunt force head injuries. They are very severe injuries, extensive skull fracturing and bleeding inside of the skull. It is very difficult to fracture the skull. You would need severe force. When Dr. Lum was asked what kind of weapon could cause these injuries, Dr. Lum stated, "It's a blunt, heavy object. Some of the lacerations upon the back of the scalp in particular had a curved element to them. That might indicate a curved, blunt, heavy weapon, such as, for example, a hammer. I can't say it was caused by a hammer, but it is an example of the type of weapon that has likely been used in this case." Marcin then proceeded to cut up the body with a hacksaw, stick at least some of the parts in a freezer, and set about making what was left of Stuart Everett disappear, all while he played it off that Stuart was still alive. You see, Marcin kept using Stuart's bank card for practically everything, from a dinner at a Kentucky Fried Chicken, to paying bills, to hiring a workman who hauled away some of Stuart's furniture. Marcin also opened a bank account in Stuart's name. He sent text messages to Stuart's loved ones from his phone, and even sent a birthday card to Stuart's brother. Although the brother would later note that the handwriting on the card looked nothing like Stuart's, and the language on the card didn't sound like him at all. Meanwhile, a dumpster appeared in front of the house and quickly filled up with debris. And every day, Marcin came and went with a bag or a suitcase in hand. He boarded a bus, made his way to a park or a field, and dropped off another piece of Stuart Everett for the wildlife to find. I debated on adding this next section in, but honestly I felt like I'd be doing the story somewhat of an injustice by skipping over it. So there was actually a second roommate that lived with both Stuart and Marcin, and his name was Mikhail Polchowski. Mikhail was originally charged along with Marcin for the murder of Stuart. However, charges against him were dropped shortly after, as it became clear that Marcin acted alone and had the motive to carry out the crime. It's kind of hard to really find out anything about Mikhail. There's only a handful of articles mentioning him, and anything after the first few months of this crime happening, he practically vanishes from police radar. With him being cleared by police, and simply due to the savage nature of this crime, I can imagine Mikhail doesn't really want to be associated with it, and I didn't want to drag his name into it when police have already cleared him of any wrongdoing. His name is only briefly mentioned in the affidavit, and during the sentencing, the judge actually said this.
You shared a rented house in Worsley Road, Winton, Greater Manchester, with Stuart Everett and with another man, Mikhail Polchowski. The three of you had lived in the house together since 2017 and each had your own bedroom. You had moved in after you had broken up with your partner Agnes, who lived with your 2 children not far away in Worsley. You also embarked upon a careful, elaborate and lengthy exercise to conceal the fact that Stuart Everett was dead. You told your housemate, your landlord and a neighbour that he had suffered a stroke, was in hospital, had moved to Derby or to a different location in Manchester, and would not be moving back to the house in Worsley Road.
With all charges being dropped and the judge himself stating that Mikhail had no knowledge of the crime, as well as being lied to about Stuart being in the hospital by Marcin, it overwhelmingly shows that Mikhail had nothing to do with this crime. Marcin doesn't seem to have cooperated much with police. For one thing, they've been very open about the fact that they have found 27 pieces of Stuart's body, but not the whole thing. There are no public accounts, even from the trial, of Marcin speaking for himself or describing his motives. And as far as anyone has reported, Marcin Majerkiewicz just sat there, listening to his Polish interpreter as he was sentenced to a minimum of 34 years in prison. And that's where Marcin Majerkiewicz differs from many of the monsters that I've covered. He hasn't said he's not crazy. He hasn't said he is. Marcin Majerkiewicz hasn't told the world anything at all. At around 5 a.m. on March 12, 2022, when most were either still sleeping or just waking up for the workday, 18-year-old Naomi Irion had just parked her blue 1992 Mercury Sable in the parking lot of a Walmart in Fernley, Nevada. She was there to catch the employee shuttle to her job, 20 miles east at a Panasonic factory that manufactured batteries for Teslas. It was a major landmark in the area and considered a fairly good employer. And for a town like Fernley, which seemed to have more gas stations than stoplights, it was about as good as it was going to get. During my initial research, Fernley didn't really strike me as anything different from any other small town. Coming from one myself, I know the vibes they can give off. And while that doesn't mean they are inherently sketchy or violent, some can be. And as I started doing more research on the city, I was seeing post after post from people either still living there or being from there, describing it as incredibly boring and that drugs, particularly meth, is a bad problem in the area. Naomi had led an unusual life up to that point. Her father, Irion, worked for the U.S. State Department, and his career had taken his family all over the world. Naomi had grown up in France, Russia, Germany, and South Africa before returning to the United States as a young adult. In August of 2021, 7 months before she found herself in that Walmart parking lot, she moved to Nevada to live with her older brother, Casey. He had moved to the area at the beginning of 2020 and would later talk about having trouble feeling connected or at home in the community. Having family nearby would have helped, and it gave Naomi a chance to begin her adult life with some support. Naomi was a vibrant young woman. Literally, her favorite color was the entire rainbow, and she usually had rainbow pins or patches on her clothing or her bag. She was the type of person that seemed friendly with everybody and was never in any kind of trouble. At 5:03 a.m., Naomi appeared on security footage at a gas station near the Walmart parking lot. Between 5:09 a.m. and 5:23 a.m., she sat in the front seat of her car, playing around on her phone. It was a chilly morning, and there was really no reason to get out before the shuttle actually arrived. At 5:24 a.m., surveillance video in the parking lot showed a man in a gray hooded jacket, with some reports stating that he was also wearing a mask, circling the parking lot with a distinctive gait. He could be seen walking up to Naomi's car and saying something to her that seemed to make her freeze in place. The man in the video then shoved his way into the car and forced her to slide over to the passenger seat. And at 5:25 a.m., the cameras caught the car leaving the parking lot with the unknown man driving. And from there, it was as if Naomi fell off the face of the earth. It was her brother, Casey, who alerted police that Naomi had gone missing. Because the Walmart was close to Interstate 80, police were concerned that she could have been taken just about anywhere in the country. A search effort was organized and an FBI poster was created, alerting everyone to Naomi's disappearance. Her description was remarkably detailed, including the fact that she had light brown hair dyed black and that one of her green eyes had a little bit of brown in it. 3 days later, on March 15th, investigators followed pings from Naomi's cell phone to find her car abandoned in a field near the Sherman-Williams emulsion plant, an industrial plant not far from the Walmart. In a press statement, officials said that they were looking for a dark-colored, late-model Chevrolet Silverado high country pickup truck in connection with Naomi's disappearance. They released a photo of the truck, although the resolution was far too low for anyone to make out a license plate or a face. Naomi's family publicly begged people to search Instagram and Snapchat for any sign of her. But for 2 long weeks, there was nothing. And for an 18-year-old not to be active on social media when she is an avid user, it's a little more than strange. Then, on March 25th, police made an arrest seemingly without explanation. Troy Driver of Fallon, Nevada was 41 years old, and all anyone knew at first was that he'd been arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Naomi. A few days later, his criminal rap sheet came out in the media, and the true horror of who Troy Driver was came to light. At age 17, he pleaded guilty to helping lure a 19-year-old drug dealer to Troy's parents' home, where the man's girlfriend shot him in the driveway. Troy then helped carry the body away and dump it beside a highway. He had also pleaded guilty to a series of armed robberies and had been sentenced to 15 years in prison. Believe it or not, his record went as far back as age 12, when he had shot a deer out of hunting season. A few days before he was arrested in Naomi's case, he'd left his garage door open and his neighbor had seen his blue high country pickup truck and called in the tip. 3 days later, on March 28th, the FBI issued a public statement. They were adding Naomi to their top 10 most wanted kidnapping victims list. And they were offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to her return or to the recovery of her remains. The day after that announcement, on March 29th, the police got a call. The information led them to a desolate spot in the high desert of Churchill County in northern Nevada. There, in a shallow grave in an abandoned mine, they found the body of Naomi Irion. The news hit Fernley like a bomb. The town was growing but still small, and pretty much everyone either had been in a situation like Naomi's, waiting alone in a dark parking lot on a cold morning, or knew someone who had. Troy Driver was charged with Naomi's kidnapping, rape, and murder. The authorities alleged that he shot her, buried her in the shallow grave, disposed of her phone somehow, and bought new tires for his truck, presumably so he couldn't be connected to any tire tracks left at the gravesite. It's not clear how Naomi's phone could have led police to her car if Troy disposed of it, but it's possible he simply didn't do a particularly good job, or the phone was destroyed after the murder had occurred. And while I wouldn't make any guarantees about him being some sophisticated criminal genius, you'll soon come to find out that this also wasn't a random act of violence. Troy Driver went to great lengths to avoid getting caught by extensively planning this crime. But that planning came back to bite him, as when he was evaluated, he was found mentally fit to stand trial. But that trial would never happen. On August 6, 2023, Troy Driver was found dead in his maximum security cell during an inmate check. His official cause of death was self-inflicted asphyxiation. He left behind a letter expressing regret and apologizing for what he called his darkness within. However, Troy never made an actual confession. In the aftermath, the Lyon County Sheriff's Office held a press conference, releasing what they called a mountain of evidence that they would have used at trial against Troy. They revealed that his DNA had been found on Naomi's hands and elsewhere on her body. He had driven over 100 miles to Winnemucca, Nevada to replace his tires in a place where people wouldn't recognize him. Going farther back in his history, they had testimonies from people who had known him, all claiming that he had been obsessed with serial killers and other murderers. An interesting fact that really stood out to me was it was later confirmed that he had interrogated his ex-girlfriend's daughter about the bus routes that took workers to the Panasonic building, the exact same one where Naomi had worked. But perhaps the most disturbing detail was that grave in the abandoned mine. According to police, the hole had been dug weeks before Naomi was taken. Troy had been planning to take and kill someone for a while. Naomi could have been anyone. Her targeting was random, she didn't know Troy Driver, and she hadn't done anything to him. And that kind of mindless and senseless violence really does seemingly hurt all the more. Troy Driver was a coward who took the life of someone who had their entire life ahead of them, where his was riddled with a lengthy rap sheet of violence and pain. And that very same violence took advantage of an innocent young woman. This is one of those cases that, in all probability, will never be completely understood. We know who did it, and the when and the how and to whom, but the why remains just out of reach. Troy Driver obviously wanted to do something like this to someone like Naomi. But we'll never be able to ask him what he thought his crime would do for him. And while cases like Naomi's are fortunately rare, they do still happen.